In one decade, a single government took a country of 108 million people and engineered a financial collapse so complete that it had to sell its own coastline to avoid going bankrupt. This is how you destroy an economy. This isn't just Egypt's story. Every single decision that broke this economy, prioritizing vanity projects over useful ones, letting one powerful group crowd out everyone else, defending a currency that wasn't real. These are the same decisions made in smaller doses by governments everywhere. Understanding how it goes wrong at scale teaches you how to spot it early. By February 2024, credit default swaps, the financial instruments that measure how likely a country is to go bankrupt, ranked Egypt as the second most likely nation on earth to default. The only country ranked above it was Ukraine. Ukraine was being actively invaded at the time. Here's the playbook, not the Egyptian government's stated plan. Obviously, nobody plans to collapse. But when you zoom out and look at what actually happened step by step, a pattern emerges. Step 1. Take control of the economy and hand it to one entity that answers to nobody. In Egypt's case, that was the military. By the time the crisis hit, independent researchers estimated the military controlled somewhere above 40% of the entire Egyptian economy. Bottled water, gas stations, cement, pasta, wheat imports, all of it. Step 2. Direct enormous investment into things that look impressive but generate no return. A new capital city built from sand in the desert. The widest bridge in the world, built specifically to set a Guinness World Record. A driverless metro line running to a city nobody lives in yet. Step 3. Borrow the money to pay for all of it, then borrow more. Egypt's external debt in 2013 was $43 billion. By 2023, it was $168 billion, almost quadrupled in a decade. That's the blueprint: monopoly, vanity, and debt. Here's what makes the military's control so specifically destructive. These companies don't pay taxes. They don't pay customs. They use conscript labor, meaning civilians are compelled to work for them for free. They receive government contracts without any competitive bidding, and they are audited only by other military officers. That's not an economy. That's a racket with a flag on it. Every structural problem in Egypt eventually connects back to one thing: not enough dollars. Here is the economic loop and how it works in practice. Egypt imports most of what it consumes: wheat, fuel, medicine, industrial machinery. All of those things are priced in dollars on global markets. To pay for them, Egypt needs a steady inflow of foreign currency. That inflow comes from three main sources: tourism, the Suez Canal, and foreign companies operating inside Egypt and converting their revenue into local currency at Egyptian banks. Now watch what happens when you hand the economy to the military and drive out private foreign investment. The cement giants leave, the manufacturers leave. The foreign currency they were bringing in stops arriving. The central bank's reserves drain. The Egyptian pound starts losing value. Imports become more expensive. Inflation rises, the pound loses more value. When two cement companies left after the military opened competing plants in 2018, they didn't just take jobs, they took dollars Egypt could not afford to lose. Put this in terms that land. Imagine your salary is paid in a currency that loses half its value in a year. Your rent doesn't change in local terms, but the bread, the medicine, the fuel you need to cook your food, those are all imported. Those prices doubled, then doubled again. Or imagine you own a small factory in Cairo. You want to expand, hire 10 more people, compete for a government contract. But the military-owned company bidding against you pays no taxes, uses free labor, and gets the contract before you even submit your bid. You don't expand, you leave, or you never start. That's how an economy hollows out, not in one dramatic moment, but in a million quiet decisions to give up. For years, Egypt's government defended an exchange rate that was completely detached from reality. Officially, $1 US was worth around 30 Egyptian pounds. That was the government's number. The problem? You couldn't actually buy dollars at that rate. Banks didn't have them. The official rate was a fiction. So a black market emerged. By early 2024, the black market rate had hit 70 pounds to the dollar, more than double the official price. Two parallel economies running simultaneously, the one on paper and the one where people actually bought and sold things. When a government defends a fake exchange rate, it burns through its foreign reserves doing it. The IMF described it publicly as filling a bucket that has holes. The bucket was Egypt, and it was draining fast. Here's what makes this tragedy rather than just negligence. Every structural mistake Egypt made was then amplified by a sequence of shocks nobody could have predicted. COVID collapsed tourism from $13 billion to $4 billion. Russia's invasion of Ukraine cut off 82% of Egypt's wheat supply overnight. Then the Houthis started targeting Red Sea shipping, and Suez Canal revenue fell 61% in a single year. Bad policy set the kindling. The world lit the match. The Suez Canal is one of the most valuable pieces of geography on Earth. Egypt owns the only shortcut between Europe and Asia. Ships pay to use it because the alternative is sailing an extra 6,500 kilometers around the southern tip of Africa. In 2023, the canal generated $10 billion in revenue for Egypt, reliable, recurring geography as income. Then the Houthis started firing missiles at vessels passing through the Red Sea. Within weeks, more than 2,000 ships rerouted. They took the long way around rather than risk being hit. In 2024, Suez Canal revenue collapsed to $4 billion. Egypt's most reliable source of dollars, a literal geographical monopoly, was cut in half by a civil war in Yemen that Egypt had no part in starting. By March 2024, Egypt was weeks from default, and the world couldn't let it happen. Not out of compassion, out of calculation. 108 million people, 12% of global trade flows through the Suez Canal when it's working. Egypt's Mediterranean coast sits directly above Europe's migration pressure point. A collapsed Egypt doesn't just hurt Egyptians, it sends shockwaves through global supply chains and launches a migration crisis directly at European borders. So the bailout came together fast. The UAE paid $35 billion for development rights to 170 kilometers of prime Mediterranean coastline, the largest foreign direct investment in Egypt's history. The IMF expanded its facility to $8 billion. The World Bank added $6 billion. The EU contributed $7.4 billion, with $200 million explicitly earmarked for, and this is a direct quote from the agreement, migration management. Europe didn't bail out Egypt because it cared about Egyptians. It paid Egypt to keep Egyptians inside Egypt. Here's the part that should worry anyone watching this. The 2024 bailout didn't fix Egypt. It funded it for a few more years. Every structural problem that caused the crisis is still there. Debt service is still consuming between 75 and 90% of government revenue. The military still controls 40% of the economy. The new capital is still largely empty. The private sector is still being squeezed out. The population grows by 1.5 million people a year. Nothing was repaired, the hole was plugged temporarily. The next shock, another war, another pandemic, another commodity spike, lands on the exact same fragile structure. And there will be a next shock, there always is. So here's the question Egypt forces you to ask. At what point does a series of bad decisions become irreversible? At what point does the debt compound past fixing, the institutions hollow out past rebuilding, and the talent leave past returning? Egypt isn't there yet. It's too large, too strategically valuable, too geopolitically dangerous to be allowed to fully collapse. The world will keep bailing it out, but being too important to fail is not the same thing as being fixed.